An NSG filters traffic based on rules you write. Azure Firewall thinks about traffic. It inspects it, understands context, applies intelligence, and makes decisions that an NSG simply cannot make. That distinction is the foundation of everything you need to know about Azure Firewall. And it is one of the most heavily tested topics on the AZ 700 exam because it requires you to know not just what it does, but when to use it instead of an NSG and when to use both together. Let us start with what Azure Firewall actually is. Azure Firewall is a managed, cloud-native, stateful firewall service. The word stateful is important. An NSG is stateless in the sense that you define rules for both directions and it evaluates them independently. Azure Firewall tracks the state of network connections. It knows that if a connection was initiated from inside your network going out, the response traffic coming back in is part of that same session and should be allowed automatically. This alone makes it fundamentally more sophisticated than an NSG. Azure Firewall supports three types of rules: network rules, which work similarly to NSG rules and filter traffic based on IP addresses, ports, and protocols; application rules, which filter outbound traffic based on fully qualified domain names, which means you can say allow traffic to github.com or block traffic to any site not on your approved list; and DNAT rules, which translate an incoming public IP and port to a private IP and port inside your network, essentially acting as a port forwarding mechanism. Here is the analogy that makes this stick. Think about the difference between a basic lock on your front door and a full commercial security system in a large office building. The NSG is the lock. You set the combination. You decide who has a key. It blocks or allows based on the credentials you configured in advance. It does not think. It does not learn. It does not adapt. It just checks the key against the lock. Azure Firewall is the full security system. It has cameras at every entrance. It has motion detectors. It has a control room where everything is monitored in real time. It knows not just who is entering, but what they are doing once they are inside. It can see that someone walked in legitimately but is now attempting to access a server room they have no business being in. It logs everything. It alerts on suspicious patterns. It can make decisions based on threat intelligence that updates automatically. The lock was free and simple. The security system costs money and requires a dedicated room to operate. But when you are protecting a building full of sensitive data, the lock is simply not enough. Azure Firewall must be deployed into its own dedicated subnet. That subnet must be named exactly Azure Firewall subnet. No variation, no creativity, exactly that name. The minimum subnet size is a /26, which gives you 64 IP addresses. Microsoft needs that space for the infrastructure that runs the firewall at scale. On the exam, if you see a question about deploying Azure Firewall and one of the wrong answers has it in a subnet named something slightly different or in a subnet that is too small, that is your trap. Do not fall into it. Azure Firewall comes in two SKUs, Standard and Premium. Standard covers the network rules, application rules, DNAT, threat intelligence filtering, and all the core use cases. Premium adds three capabilities that Standard does not have: TLS inspection, which means the firewall can decrypt and inspect encrypted HTTPS traffic; IDPS, which stands for Intrusion Detection and Prevention System, and it actively looks for attack signatures in the traffic stream; and URL filtering, which is more granular than FQDN filtering because it can block specific URLs rather than entire domains. On the exam, if a scenario requires any of those three features, the answer is always Firewall Premium, not Standard. The rule processing order is also tested. Azure Firewall always evaluates DNAT rules first, then network rules, then application rules. If a DNAT rule matches, the firewall translates the address and allows the traffic without checking the other rule types. Know this sequence: NSG for simple, perimeter level filtering; Azure Firewall for intelligent, centralized, application-aware security. Day for done. See you tomorrow.